Welcome to podcast number 2 in the training for the Integrated National Evaluation Tool, the INET, for the Public Health Agency of Canada. This particular podcast covers how to complete the INET and talks briefly about how the INET is organized. Now, you may choose to print this document so that you can work away from your computer. That's perfectly fine. However, you will need to type in all your answers into the INET before it can be submitted. There is no way to submit a paper INET. If your project is absolutely unable to complete the document electronically, you will need to contact your regional evaluation consultant or your program consultant to make alternate arrangements on how to submit your INET. In general, to answer a question, you simply need to click on the circle beside the response or the responses that apply to your project. Now, for some questions where multiple responses are allowed, you will see the wording "Select all that apply." If only one answer is allowed, you will see the wording "Select only one." In other cases for other questions, you may be required to enter numbers or text within a box. For example, if you select a response that is labeled Other, please specify, you will need to provide a detailed response in the box provided. Now, these text boxes will expand if necessary. However, they can't expand while you are typing in them. So type in your response and then click your mouse somewhere outside the box. The box will then resize so that your entire response is visible, and you can go back and edit or modify your response if you wish. Finally, you can save your INET and exit Adobe Reader at any time if you need to go on to some other type of work. Whenever you're ready, just simply reopen your INET and you can continue to provide your responses. So first, let's take a look at the number of answers to select. So as I've said, in some cases you are asked for only one answer. In other cases, you need to provide multiple answers. So looking at question 3A, you see it says select all that apply. So here you can select more than one response. But in question 3B, you'll notice it says select only one. So here you need to pick the answer that best describes your project. Now, as you go through the INET, there are times where you may get to skip certain questions. In the previous version of the INET, the paper version, you had to figure out which questions to answer and which to skip all by yourself. Now, if you do choose to work on paper, you will see instructions that help you determine which questions to skip over. But the electronic INET will now show or hide follow-up questions based on your answers. So as you provide answers, the INET will close any follow-up questions on the topic that you do not need to answer and hide them from view. So typically, if you respond no in Part A, all the follow-up questions will disappear from view. For example, if you indicate that your project did not receive any additional funding, the question which asks about all the information on additional funding will disappear from view because you do not need to answer that question. So we recommend answering the first part of a question before jumping into any follow-up parts of the same question. For example, in question 15, where we talk about volunteers, you should indicate if your project had any volunteers before you start answering how many hours volunteers have worked. Now, you don't need to answer the whole INET in sequence. You can answer any individual question in any order that you wish. However, you should do all of one numbered question together starting at the top of the question. If you make a mistake or you change your response, any hidden section will reappear. And you will need to provide an answer to every visible question before your INET will be considered complete. Now, when you provide answers that you need to type in the other categories, before you add anything to another category, please make sure that what you want to add doesn't fit into one of the existing categories. That might not use the exact same wording that you would use, but it's better to check an existing category than to add something into other if the wording is very close. However, if you do check an other box, you must provide a response in the text box which is located below or beside the circle. These text boxes will expand to fit your answers. Unfortunately, they can't expand while you are typing in them. So when you're done typing your response, just click somewhere outside the box with your mouse and the text box will resize so that your entire answer is displayed. When you are using these other boxes, please don't use any special jargon or short forms or acronyms. A lot of people will be reading your data and they will have no knowledge of your project, so please be very clear. So for example, please write offered healthy eating, healthy living activities instead of saying that you offered HEAL activities. It's possible that some of the readers won't know what HEAL stands for. In some cases, you will need to enter a 0 rather than leaving a blank answer. So it's possible in some of these follow-up questions that not every category applies to your project. So we ask that you don't leave any blanks, that you insert a 0 into categories. We ask you to do this so that we know that you have read the question rather than just skipped over it. A 0 tells us that you saw it and you mean to tell us 0. A blank tells us nothing. We're not sure whether you looked at it or whether you forgot to put in your number. There are also some tips for using your electronic INET. We recommend that you avoid using the Tab or the Enter key to move from question to question. The best way to move through the INET is to use your mouse and the scroll bar to the right of the document to move through the pages of the INET. Also, don't panic if you notice that some questions disappear or reappear from view as you answer your questions. Questions are hidden if they are not applicable to your project, but if you change your responses, the hidden questions will reappear so that you can answer them. And finally, as always, make sure to save your work as you make changes. You can save the INET anytime, but we recommend that you do go through and every time you answer a long question that you save it just in case anything happens. Now here's just a brief overview on how the INET is organized. There's 5 sections in the INET. Each section asks a series of related questions about one element of your project. So Section 1 is general project information and contact information. Section 2 is about your project. That's the methods and delivery locations. Section 3 is about your project's programs, services, and activities. Section 4 is the funding, the in-kind donations, staffing, and volunteers. Section 5 is the partnerships and community involvement for your project. So this takes us to the end of podcast number 2.